The smell of cheap gasoline and old, worn leather filled the damp night air. I held the jacket in one hand and a single match in the other. It was beautiful, even after all these years. Vintage black leather, soft as butter, with a worn silver zipper that always caught just a little at the bottom. It was the last good thing anyone had ever given me. Alara, what in the hell do you think you're doing with my jacket? Chloe's voice cut through the darkness, sharp and proprietary. She always called it hers. In her mind, anything I owned was just hers and waiting. I turned slowly. My sister stood on the back patio, silhouetted by the kitchen light. Behind her, I could see the vague shapes of my mother and father, their expressions already settling into the familiar masks of annoyance and disappointment, always reserved just for me. A memory so sharp it felt like a physical blow hit me. Chloe, wearing this exact jacket, her blonde hair matted with rain, her makeup smeared, the flash of red and blue lights reflecting off the wet pavement. Her voice a perfect theatrical tremor. Alara, how could you? You were driving. You were so drunk. The smirk she shot me as the officers cuffed me, a look of pure, triumphant malice. But that hadn't happened yet. Not this time. I looked down at my hands. They were smooth, unblemished by prison tattoos or scar tissue. I was 18 again. It had been 3 days since I woke up gasping in this bed, in this house, the phantom pain of a shiv sliding between my ribs fading as an impossible reality set in. I had died at 22, 4 years into a 15-year sentence for a crime I didn't commit. And now, I was back. It's not your jacket, Chloe, I said. My voice was different. The tremor of fear and the desperate need for approval that had defined my first 18 years were gone, burned away by the hard, cold fury of my first life. Don't be a psycho, Chloe sneered, stepping onto the grass. She was already reaching for it, her fingers extended, expecting me to just hand it over like I always did. Give it to me. I'm wearing it to my party. Ah, yes, the party, her 19th birthday. The night it all went to hell, the night she got wasted, stole her own new convertible, and hit a pedestrian, all while wearing my jacket. The night my parents, Brenda and Mark, arrived on the scene and, in a breathtakingly cold act of familial preservation, wiped her prints off the wheel, put me in the driver's seat, and sacrificed me to save their golden child. No, I said. Chloe's face, so used to instant gratification, twisted in disbelief. What did you say? I said no. I looked past her, at my parents who were now drifting closer, drawn by the conflict. It was never yours. It was Grandma Anya's. She gave it to me. Don't be ridiculous, Alara, my mother's voice, clipped and cold. Your grandmother is dead. And Chloe looks so much better in it. Stop being selfish. Selfish, I repeated. The word was acid. I was the selfish one. Not them, never them. Chloe lunged, her nails aiming for my face. Just give it to me, you little bitch. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just stepped back, struck the match against the box, and dropped it onto the gasoline-soaked leather. The jacket went up in an instant, a sudden whoosh of chemical-fueled flame that lit up the backyard. The smell of burning leather was acrid and awful, but to me, it was the sweetest perfume I had ever known. All three of them screamed. Chloe's was a shriek of pure, baffled rage. You're insane! You burned it! Dad, she burned my jacket! She's a psycho! I watched the flames curl the edges of the collar, melting the silver zipper. I watched 20 years of theft, gaslighting, and casual cruelty turn to smoke and ash. This jacket was the symbol of my first downfall. It was the evidence they used against me, my jacket, my fingerprints. Its destruction was my declaration of war. I looked at their horrified, furious faces, illuminated by the fire I had built. It was never yours, I said again, my voice terrifyingly calm. And I promise you, Chloe, you are never, ever touching my things again. I was locked in my room, of course. My room was a converted storage space off the laundry room with no windows and a door that my father had put a deadbolt on the outside of for my own safety when I was 13. Now it was my prison, The irony was not lost on me. From the other side of the door, I could hear them. Their voices were muffled, but the emotions were clear. Completely unhinged. That was Mother, Brenda. What are we going to tell people? She's becoming an embarrassment. I'll take the cost of the jacket out of, well, she doesn't have any money, Father Mark grumbled. She's costing me a fortune. First the therapy that didn't work, now this. My party, Daddy, Chloe wailed. She's going to ruin my party. She did this just to ruin my birthday. She's always been jealous of me. Jealous? The word hung in the air. I pressed my ear against the cheap wood of the door. Oh, I wasn't jealous, Chloe. Not anymore. In my first life, yes. I was sick with jealousy. I was jealous of the easy way you walked through the world, shielded by our parents' adoration. I was jealous of the new cars, the endless shopping sprees, the college tuition paid without a second thought. I was jealous that your mistakes were erased while mine were carved into stone. My entire first life had been a study in neglect. I was the oops baby, born 5 years after Chloe, the perfect princess. From the start, I was the problem. I was too quiet. I was too moody. My dark hair and dark eyes were a stark contrast to my family's sun-kissed blonde aesthetic. I was the shadow, the scapegoat, the built-in maid and dog walker. When I was 10, Chloe accidentally broke our grandmother's priceless porcelain vase. I was the one who was grounded for a month for leaving it on the edge of the table. When I was 15, I won a statewide art competition. My parents forgot to attend the ceremony because Chloe had a really bad breakup and needed ice cream. When I asked for help with college applications, my father told me to be realistic and handed me a brochure for the local community college, while Chloe's acceptance packet to a private, out-of-state university with a C average was framed on the mantel. The only person who ever saw me was Grandma Anya, my mother's mother. She was a stern, sharp woman who saw right through her daughter's narcissistic charade. She would visit, and while Mother and Chloe fawned over her, trying to secure their inheritance, Grandma Anya would pull me aside. You have fire in you, Alara, she'd whisper, pressing a $20 bill into my hand. Don't let them put it out. She died when I was 17, just 6 months before my accident. Her death was devastating. It was the first time I understood true loneliness. She'd left me the jacket in her will. It was her jacket from the 1970s, a rebellious piece she'd worn when she ran away from home. For my little rebel, the note said, when you're ready to run, this will keep you warm. I never got the chance to run. The party, Chloe's 19th. I remembered it all with horrifying clarity. My job was to be the designated driver for Chloe and her friends. I was to be sober, available, and invisible. Chloe got drunk, predictably. Belligerently drunk. She'd been mixing champagne with something she'd bought from a shady upperclassman. She decided she had to drive the new red convertible our father had just given her. She snatched my jacket from my shoulders, laughing. It looks better on me. God, you're such a prude, Alara. She sped down the rain-slicked suburban streets, blasting music, one hand on the wheel, the other holding a red plastic cup. I begged her to slow down. I tried to grab the wheel. She shoved me back. You're ruining my fun! Then the sickening thud. A man, walking his dog. We hit him. The car spun out, crashing into a mailbox. The silence afterward was deafening, broken only by Chloe's sudden, hysterical sobs. My parents were there in 5 minutes. I never knew who she called. Mark took one look at the scene. The man on the road, the totaled car, his sobbing daughter, and his face went blank. Brenda was even colder. She was pure calculation. Alara, she said, her voice like ice. Get out of the car. What? We have to help him. Get out, now. She pulled me out of the passenger seat. She grabbed Chloe. Chloe, stop crying. Did anyone see you? Chloe just shook her head, blubbering. Good. Brenda grabbed a cocktail napkin from the floor of the car and meticulously wiped the steering wheel, the gear shift, the door handle. Then she grabbed my hand. She forced it onto the wheel. What are you doing? I shrieked, trying to pull away. Mom, no. Shut up, Alara. My father's voice was a low growl. He grabbed my shoulders and physically shoved me into the driver's seat. You did this. You took the car. You were drinking. I wasn't. I'm sober. Chloe was driving. She's drunk. She is distraught, Brenda snapped. You, on the other hand, are a known problem. You're depressed. You're unstable. You stole your sister's new car for a joyride. That's insane, I cried. No one will believe you. Oh, they will, Chloe whispered, her tears drying up with miraculous speed. She pointed at me, her face a mask of angelic victimhood. She was driving, Daddy. She was going so fast, she wouldn't listen to me. And just like that, my life was over. The man we hit, Mr. Henderson from down the street, didn't die. But he was permanently disabled. The trial was a joke. My entire family testified against me. My mother spoke of my history of erratic behavior and my deep-seated jealousy of Chloe. My father talked about how I was troubled and prone to lying. Chloe, in a performance worthy of an Oscar, cried on the stand, recounting how I'd forced her into the car, claiming I was out of control. I was 18. I had a public defender who looked exhausted. I was found guilty of aggravated assault, vehicular assault, and DUI. They'd found an empty vodka bottle under the driver's seat, planted by my father. The judge, seeing a remorseless, troubled youth and a perfect, suffering family, made an example of me. 15 years. Prison was exactly what you'd expect. It was loud and cold and smelled of bleach and despair. I learned to be quiet. I learned to be invisible. I got hard. The girl who cried when her parents forgot her birthday was gone. In her place was a woman with a core of pure, undiluted rage. I was 22. I was in the mess hall. A fight broke out over a television channel. I wasn't involved. I was just trying to eat my watery mashed potatoes. A woman I'd never even spoken to got shoved. She stumbled, and the sharpened piece of metal in her hand, intended for someone else, found its way into my side. I remembered staring up at the fluorescent lights, the sounds of the riot fading. I felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. My last thought was, I wish I had burned that stupid jacket. And then I woke up. My heart was pounding. The smell of bleach was gone, replaced by the faint, cloying scent of my mother's potpourri. I was in my childhood bed. My hands were soft. I looked at the calendar on my wall. It was 3 days. 3 days until the party. I had been given a second chance, and I was not going to waste it on forgiveness. The deadbolt on my door scraped back. My father opened it. His face was a mask of paternal disappointment, a look he had perfected. Alara, your mother and I are at a loss. We have given you everything. I just stared at him. Everything? You gave me a cot in a closet. You gave me Chloe's leftovers. You gave me a 15-year prison sentence. Burning that jacket? That was your grandmother's. It was valuable. You've destroyed a family heirloom out of spite. It was my heirloom, I said, my voice flat. And I can do whatever I want with my own property. He bristled. He wasn't used to this. He was used to me flinching, apologizing, bursting into tears. Don't use that tone with me. You're grounded. You're not leaving this house. You will be here for Chloe's party. You will serve the guests, and you will apologize to your sister. I almost laughed. Okay, Dad. He blinked, surprised by the easy compliance. He grunted, Good, maybe you're finally learning. He shut the door and bolted it again. He was right. I was finally learning. My first life, I was a victim. This life, I was a predator. And I had 3 days until the hunt. My plan began with a memory of Grandma Anya sitting at her kitchen table just a month before she died. I'd been crying, another casual cruelty from my family fresh in my mind. They're fools, Alara, she'd said, stirring her tea. Weak, vain fools. But weak people can be dangerous. They'll drag you down to save themselves. She'd reached across the table and grasped my hand. I'm not going to be here forever. I've made arrangements to protect you. What arrangements? A safety net, my lawyer, Mr. Harrison. He has a letter, he has instructions. If you are ever in real trouble, you call him. You use the password Firefly. Don't you forget it. I had forgotten it. In my first life, I was so beaten down, so convinced of my own worthlessness that I never even thought to call him. By the time I was 21, the age she'd mentioned for an inheritance, I was already 3 years into my sentence. But now I remembered. I waited until I heard the cars pull out of the driveway. Mother, off to her tennis lesson. Father, off to his important job. Chloe, off to the mall to buy a new, even more expensive dress for her party. The deadbolt was a joke. I'd learned to pick locks like that with a bobby pin in my first week in Gen Pop. I was out of my room in 30 seconds. I went straight to my father's study. His laptop was open on his desk. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with anticipation. I needed 2 things: Mr. Harrison's number and my family's secrets. Grandma's old address book was still in the desk drawer, right where it always was. Harrison? Elijah? I ripped the page out. Next, the secrets. In my first life, I'd been too self-absorbed in my own misery to pay attention. But in prison, you learn to listen. You learn to observe. You learn that everyone has a weakness. I knew my family's weaknesses. Father, Mark, greed. He was an executive at a mid-level investment firm, but he lived like a king. He was drowning in debt to fund Mother's and Chloe's lifestyle. In my first life, I remembered a hushed, drunken argument between him and my mother right before the trial. "I've moved everything," he'd slurred. "If this goes south, we'll be fine. The offshore accounts are secure." I sat. At his computer. He was arrogant. His password was Chloe 19th. I was in. It took me less than an hour. I wasn't a hacker, but I knew how to follow a trail. He was cooking the books, as they say. He was running a classic shell game, skimming profits from client accounts and diverting them to an untraceable offshore account in the Cayman Islands. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was beautiful. I downloaded everything. Transaction histories, account numbers, a file named Contingency that detailed the entire scheme. I saved it all to a cheap USB drive I found in a junk drawer. Mother, Brenda. Vanity. Her entire world was built on the illusion of the perfect family, the perfect life, the perfect marriage. Her weakness was her affair. I knew about it because I was the one who had to discreetly wash the grass stains and cheap cologne smell from her tennis whites. In my first life, I thought nothing of it. This time, I knew it was ammunition. I went to her room. Her phone was on her nightstand, charging. Password? Perfect Brenda. I almost gagged. I went to her texts. There he was, Coach Rick. The messages were graphic. He was a 25-year-old tennis pro at the country club. She was funding his entire life. I screenshotted everything. Chloe, golden child. Impulsivity. Chloe lived for the moment. She had no concept of consequences. She was vain like Mother, but also lazy, and I now realized, a user. In my first life, I'd seen her vitamins. I'd seen the pawn tickets she'd left in her jeans pockets, which I was, of course, expected to wash. She was stealing. Small things at first, then bigger. She'd been selling Mother's jewelry, pieces Grandma Anya had left to her, for drug money. I went to her disaster of a room. It was a hurricane of designer clothes and fast food wrappers. I checked her jewelry box. Empty. I checked under her mattress. Bingo. A small stash of pills and a half-dozen pawn tickets, all from the last 2 months. She'd hawked a Rolex, 3 diamond bracelets, and a set of pearl earrings. I took pictures of it all. I put everything on the USB drive. Then I went to the guest room, locked the door, and used the burner phone I'd bought 2 days ago with the emergency cash Grandma Anya had told me to hide in my mattress. The line clicked. Harrison and Associates. Elijah Harrison, please. May I ask who is calling? My name is Alara. I'm calling about a Firefly. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Yes, Miss Petrova. I've been waiting for this call for a very long time. Your grandmother was very insistent. Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice finally breaking, the weight of 2 lifetimes crashing down on me. I'm in trouble. I'm in real trouble. And I need your help. I told him everything. I told him about my family, the neglect, the abuse. I told him about the accident in my first life, The frame-up, the trial, the prison sentence, my death. I told him I'd been reborn. To his credit, he was quiet. He didn't call me crazy. Maybe he thought I was speaking in metaphor. Maybe, having known my grandmother, he was open to the impossible. She always said they were vipers, he said finally, his voice heavy. She said they would eat you alive if you gave them the chance. They did, I whispered. But now I'm back, and I'm not going to let them. Your grandmother set up a trust fund for you, Alara, a significant one. It was to be yours at 21, or upon your legal emancipation, and she was very specific about this, upon your provable demonstration of endangerment by your immediate family. She also left me a letter detailing her suspicions, to be opened only upon your request. I'm requesting it, I said. And I have proof. I have everything. Their fraud, their affairs, their theft. I have it all on a USB drive. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was no longer that of a kindly old lawyer. It was cold steel. Good girl, he said. Your grandmother was a brilliant woman. She knew you had fire. It seems you've finally learned how to use it. Now here is what we are going to do. The party is in 2 days, you said? Perfect. People love a show. The next 48 hours were a blur of meticulous, cold-blooded planning. I met Mr. Harrison in a coffee shop downtown, having shimmied down the drain pipe outside my prison and taken a bus. I gave him the USB drive. His face grew paler with every file he opened. This is more than I imagined, he said, clicking through my father's offshore accounts. This isn't just skimming, Alara. This is massive securities fraud. He's stolen millions. He needed it, I said flatly, to pay for my mother's tennis coaches and my sister's convertibles. And these, he looked at the photos of the pawn tickets, the screenshots of the texts. He shook his head. Anya was right. They're rotten, all of them. He laid out the plan. It was beautiful. It was surgical. It was total. The party is the perfect venue, he explained. It's public. They're surrounded by the very people whose opinions they value most. A public humiliation is the only thing this family will understand. He made calls. He spoke to an investigator at the SEC he had on retainer. He contacted the local police department, speaking to a detective he trusted, and filed a report for the stolen jewelry, holding the pawn tickets as evidence. He even, and this was my favorite part, tracked down the wife of Coach Rick. She'll be very interested to attend a party where her husband is apparently so beloved, Mr. Harrison said with a dry smile. My job was simple. Play the victim. Be the downtrodden, psycho daughter. I went back to the house, climbing back up the drain pipe, and locked myself in my room. I was quiet. I was compliant. I apologized to Chloe through the door, my voice thick with fake tears. She lapped it up. Whatever, freak, just stay out of my way on Saturday. Oh, would be staying out of her way. The night of the party arrived. The house was transformed. Twinkling lights, catering staff, a string quartet on the lawn. My parents' entire world was here. All the shallow, wealthy, judgmental friends they worked so hard to impress. My mother, Brenda, was radiant in a silver dress, her laughter tinkling as she greeted guests. My father, Mark, was expansive, playing the role of the generous patriarch, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand. And Chloe. She was the star. She wore a nauseatingly pink, poofy designer dress that must have cost thousands. She was holding court by the pool, soaking up the adoration. My job was to be Cinderella. I was in a plain black dress, forced to carry trays of champagne glasses and hors d'oeuvres. I endured the pitying looks. I weathered the whispers. That's the other one, the troubled one. I heard she had a breakdown, burned a priceless heirloom. Brenda and Mark are saints, honestly, saints. I just kept my head down, my eyes on the clock. 8 p.m., showtime. My mother tapped a glass for a toast. The music quieted. Darlings, thank you all for coming, she trilled, raising her glass. To our daughter, Chloe, 19 years old and already so accomplished, so beautiful, so good. We are simply the luckiest parents in the world. The crowd awed and applauded. As the applause died down, I heard a new sound, a clear, authoritative voice from the front hallway. Brenda and Mark, I'm afraid we need to have a word. The string quartet faltered. The chatter stopped. Everyone turned. Mr. Harrison walked through the French doors onto the patio. He was not alone. He was flanked by two uniformed police officers and a woman in a severe black pantsuit who radiated federal authority. My father's face went from ruddy to corpse white in a nanosecond. Elijah, what is the meaning of this? This is a private party. I'm afraid it's not a social call, Mark, Mr. Harrison said, his voice carrying across the silent yard. He nodded to the woman in the suit. Mr. Mark, she said, stepping forward, her voice like a razor. I'm Investigator Reynolds with the Securities and Exchange Commission. You are under arrest for multiple counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. The collective gasp from the party was so loud it startled the birds in the trees. This is a misunderstanding, my father stammered, looking around wildly for support. A mistake! We have your transaction logs, mister, your offshore account numbers, and a very detailed contingency file, Investigator Reynolds said, holding up the USB drive I had given Mr. Harrison. It seems your contingency has been activated. One of the officers stepped forward and clicked handcuffs onto my father's wrists. You have the right to remain silent. My mother let out a sound I had never heard before, a strangled, dying animal noise. Mark, do something. You can't let them. She turned, her eyes landing on me. I was standing by the catering table, watching, her face contorted. You, she hissed. You did this, you bitch! She lunged at me, her nails bared, but Mr. Harrison stepped between us. I wouldn't, Brenda. We haven't gotten to your part yet. My part? Yes, Mr. Harrison said, pulling a set of documents from his briefcase. As the executor of Anya Petrova's estate, I am here to inform Ilara that her trust fund is now active. As per her grandmother's will, a provable demonstration of endangerment has been met. Ilara is now financially independent. He turned to the stunned crowd. Endangerment, which includes, but is not limited to, years of emotional abuse, neglect, and, as it turns out, theft. The second police officer stepped forward, approaching Chloe, who was frozen by the pool. Ma'am, we have multiple pawn tickets filed in your name for items reported stolen by the Petrova estate. We need you to come with us. What? Chloe shrieked, finally snapping out of it. Mom, tell them. Oh, I think your mother is a bit preoccupied, a new voice said. A woman was storming across the lawn. It was Mrs. Davis, Coach Rick's wife. I'd sent her the anonymous invitation 2 days ago. She marched right up to my mother. She snarled. You've been sleeping with my husband. You bought him a car. My mother's face, if possible, got even whiter. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, really? Mrs. Davis yelled, loud enough for the entire county to hear. Then what do you call these? She held up her phone, displaying the screenshots of the text messages I had so carefully provided. In that moment, it was total, glorious chaos. My father was being read his rights. My mother was being screamed at and slapped by a very angry Mrs. Davis. Guests were filming on their phones, the socialites scrambling to get the best angle of the implosion of the perfect family. And Chloe? She did exactly what I knew she would. She panicked. While all eyes were on our parents, she bolted. She ran to the front of the house where her shiny red convertible, the future murder weapon, was parked. She fumbled for her keys, jumped in, and tore out of the driveway, tires squealing. She was drunk. I'd watched her down at least 5 glasses of champagne. She was speeding. She was hysterical. It was all happening again. But this time, I was ready. As she sped down the street, she didn't get very far. At the end of the block, 2 police cars, lights flashing, blocked the road. Mr. Harrison and I had anticipated this. We had called in an anonymous tip 30 minutes earlier. A guest at the party, Chloe, is severely intoxicated and has threatened to drive. We all watched. We saw her fail the sobriety test. We saw her try to bribe the officer, and we saw them cuff her and put her in the back of the patrol car, DUI, driving on a suspended license, which I knew about from her mail, and, thanks to Mr. Harrison, grand larceny for the jewelry. The party was over. I stood on the patio watching the 3 police cars drive away, each one containing a member of my perfect family. The lawn was littered with abandoned champagne flutes. The guests were huddled in whispering, scandalized groups. Mr. Harrison walked over and stood beside me. "Well," he said softly, "that was quite the show." "They deserved it," I said. My voice was even. I felt no remorse. I felt no sadness. I just felt quiet. "Your grandmother left you a letter," he said, handing me an old cream-colored envelope. "She said to give it to you when the vipers were back in their cage." He motioned to a black town car waiting at the curb. "You're free, Alara. Your new apartment is ready. Your trust is active. You never have to see them again." I picked up my single, small backpack from by the door, the only thing I'd bothered to pack. I walked past the wreckage of my family's life, past the gawking neighbors, and got in the car. I didn't look back. As the car pulled away, I opened the letter. Grandma Anya's familiar, spiky handwriting filled the page. "My dearest Alara, if you are reading this, it means the bastards finally showed their true colors. I am sorry I wasn't there to protect you. I am sorry I left you with them for so long. Do not mourn them. Do not forgive them. They are small, and you are vast. They are shadow, and you are fire. You were born from the ashes of better women than them. I knew you had it in you. I knew that one day you would stop flinching and start fighting. Your life is your own now. Go build it, and never, ever let anyone put out your flame. P.S. I always hated that house. Burn it down if you get the chance." My lawyer will tell you I'm joking. I am not. A single tear, the first one I'd shed in this new life, rolled down my cheek. I wasn't crying from sadness. I was crying from relief. I looked out the window as we turned onto the highway, leaving the suburbs and my old life behind forever. I was 18 years old, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I was finally, truly alive. 5 years later, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse apartment, overlooking the city skyline. The night air was cool, and the sounds of the city were a distant, comforting hum. I was 23, but I felt ancient. My life was unrecognizable. Grandma Anya's significant trust fund had been an understatement. She had been independently wealthy. I was, to put it plainly, set for life. But I hadn't just sat on the money. I had a degree in business and another in art history. I'd poured my energy and my inheritance into building something new. I owned a gallery, The Anya, which specialized in finding and promoting forgotten or overlooked female artists. It was my passion. My business, however, was a high-end, sustainable fashion line. Our signature piece, the one that sold out every season, was a beautifully crafted, vegan leather moto jacket. We called it the Firefly. My new life was quiet and stable and mine. I had a small circle of real friends. I had a therapist. I was, by all accounts, happy. And them, the vipers, their cages were of their own making. My father, Mark, had his case fast-tracked thanks to the overwhelming, sloppy evidence I'd provided. He pleaded guilty to securities fraud and served 2 years in a minimum security federal prison. He was out now. His assets were seized to pay the massive SEC fines and restitution. His reputation was gone forever. He lived in a studio apartment in a bad part of town, working a temp job as a bookkeeper. He called me once. His voice was thin, reedy. He asked for money. I changed my number. My mother, Brenda, was the one who truly lost everything. The divorce from my father was brutal and public. Mrs. Davis, the coach's wife, had not been kind, and the affair became the talk of the town. With my father's assets frozen, my mother was left with nothing. The house was foreclosed on. Her friends vanished overnight. The fall from grace was total. The last I'd heard, she was working as a hostess at a chain restaurant by the interstate, her beauty hardening under a layer of cheap makeup and bitter resentment. And Chloe, my golden child sister, her downfall was the most pathetic. The DUI was bad, but the grand larceny charge for all the jewelry she'd pawned was what stuck. With Mr. Harrison representing the estate, me, She was prosecuted to the full extent. She got 5 years probation. She violated it in 6 months, caught shoplifting to feed the drug habit she'd never kicked. She served 8 months in county jail. It broke her. She was in and out of state-funded rehab programs, still blaming me, still writing me furious, misspelled letters that my assistant dutifully shredded. Tonight was the annual gala for my foundation, the Anya Project, which provided legal aid and scholarships for young people escaping abusive homes. I was the keynote speaker. I adjusted the collar of my own Firefly jacket and headed to the event. The ballroom was full. I stood at the podium looking out at the faces of donors, supporters, and some of the kids we had helped. I started my speech, talking about resilience, about building a new life from the ashes of an old one. As I spoke, my eyes scanned the room, and then they locked with someone else's. She was in a black and white uniform, holding a tray of dirty glasses. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her face was lined with a stress and exhaustion that had nothing to do with a long shift. It was my mother. She was working as part of the catering staff. Our eyes met. I saw the flash of recognition, the shock, the deep burning humiliation. And then I saw the familiar, reptilian hatred flash in her eyes, the look that said, "You should be me and I should be you." I didn't falter. I didn't look away. I didn't stop my speech. I held her gaze and I smiled. Small, polite, devastating smile. Then I turned my attention back to the crowd, to the people who mattered. "We are not defined by the people who tried to break us," I said, my voice clear and strong, ringing through the ballroom. "We are not defined by the fire they put us through. We are defined by the fact that we walked out of it and we learned to build our own warmth, our own light from the ashes." My mother turned and fled through the service door, her tray rattling. I took a sip of water and continued my speech. The fire I had started in the backyard 5 years ago had been small, but it had been enough. It burned down their entire world, and from those ashes I had built an empire. I was safe, I was free, and I was, finally, warm.